The 2025 NFL Draft is 1 day away, and on today's episode, we're going to break down the positions with the most depth and value, as well as the ones with the least. What positions can't you wait on? We'll talk about that and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an offensive draft analyst with Bleacher Report. That's my guy, Sanchez. He is a director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. And guys, as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And we have another fun one as we get closer. One day away from the 2025 the kickoff to the 2025 NFL Draft. We're going to be talking about the positions with the most talent and most depth that you can wait round 4 and 5 and get yourself a starter. Those positions that you say, you know what, if we miss on this early, we might be screwed. And then we're going to talk about the discussion that teams will have when it comes down to the war room. Draft for need or go BPA. But before we can get into that, guys, we got to talk about the fact that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Keith, when you look at this draft, right, and most people, they hate the quarterback class. They absolutely despise the wide receiver class. But there are some positions they don't like the tackle class either. But there's multiple positions that have multi-round depth in this class where you say, you know what, it's 4th round. We hadn't drafted one in rounds 1 through 3, but we got some guys on the board that we feel comfortable with. What positions for you stand out to having the most depth in the 2025 NFL Draft?
Yeah, this exercise, I've gotten practice with it, just using the mock draft machine at the Draft Network. And what I did was I was drafting running backs early. But I think the running back class has a lot of depth because I'm liking what I see DP on the board as I go through just using it, right? Yeah. As I go through it, and I still got running backs in the 4th round. I'm like, that's the way to go. So I think the running back depth, and it's guys that's so far off the radar, right? Like your Raheem Rocket Sanders, and this is a guy that came in, I think, closer to 230 pounds and ran up a 4.4 or 4.5. Like that's RB1 type of measurables, right? Yeah. And then you still have guys like Khalil Mullings, where in September, probably middle of October, DP, we were talking about, hey, Khalil Mullings is a dude, another 6 foot, 220 pound plus back. So I really like what the running back depth is because there are a lot of starters. And I think once teams, I feel like this, it's enough to where you should be able to find a really good running back in the 4th round, unless all of the teams that need running backs double dip in rounds 1 through 3, right? Outside of that, you should be okay.
No, I 100% agree with you, right? Like I and that's why for me it's like, Ashton, we talk about Ashton, Jeanty's my RB1, but like the even with the talks of teams wanting to trade up into the top 5 and get him, I'm like, why are we spending extra assets to go get a running back in a class that's loaded with running backs?
Yeah.
Like I don't, if this was last year, sure, I'm not arguing with that. If Ashton Jeanty was in last year's class, he said, listen, we don't like the depth and talent pool after round 2 at running back. By all means, I understand. But in a class that has, and you know what's crazy about this class, Keith? It is
what up?
It's so versatile in terms of it has everything you want. You want speedsters? It got it. This class has it. You need pass catchers? This class has it. You need it's a bunch of big body running backs. You just list off Khalil Mullings, Raheem Rocket Sanders, Caleb Johnson, Ollie Gordon, Omarion Hampton. Like there's so many Quinshon Judkins. There's so many big, powerful, burly backs in this class that if you need that, kind of prototypical RB1 workhorse type of guy, great. If you need that RB2 that's going to come change the pace, you got a guy like Trevion Henderson. I know some people view him as an RB1. I just can't get over the fact that when you were the RB1 for 2 years after your freshman year, you got hurt both years, and they had to rotate somebody in for you.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't see him as RB1, but there is, we had the defensive tackle conversation, right, about the buckets, right? I think it's the same exact thing with the running back conversation. That's why it's hard to rank these guys, because you get into totally different style, like stylistically totally different running backs, right? And you get your, like you said, your Trevion Hendersons, RJ Harveys, the Trevor Etiennes, like those kind of smaller, more compact.
Can't forget about the people's champion, Cam Scatterboo, Keith. We can't forget about the people's champion.
Cam Scatterboo is another one, right? It's just so many backs, and then even the guys that emerge late, like your Kansas State DJ Gittins, that people are getting on. Man. Then even another small running back that we didn't talk about, but led the SEC in rushing, Dylan Sampson, right? Like he goes into that category too. So there's so many different running backs.
Rashard Smith, like out of SMU, like
another speedster.
My over at Bleacher Report, we did our final big board and we dropped the superlatives, and one of the superlatives of running back was the best pass catcher. It's the guy that played wide receiver. Like there's no other question. There's nobody else that can take that role. And we saw it down at the Senior Bowl. Like this guy can do the speed, the change of direction, the hands. He's natural at it, because for 2-3 years at Miami before transferring to SMU, he was a slot receiver. So that gives you that versatility of play calling, or what I can do with a guy like Brashard Smith out of SMU. I agree with you. Go ahead.
No, and I was saying just even more all around backs, right? You still have Woody Marks out of USC that people, was talking about for a minute, and then even a forgotten name who's a good running back, Devin Neal, right? Like nobody talks about him anymore. So it's truly probably 20 guys deep, right? Yeah. And you should, the New York Giants, after this year, you should be able to kind of right your wrongs for the Saquon Barkley thing, right? And I say, to be able to right your wrongs, go get two guys to make sure, right? Along with your boy Tracy that's already there.
Yeah, like you got Tracy. Like I think Damian Martinez would be a great fit to pair with him. But that's the thing. Like this class is so deep, you forget some of the guys that are good players. Like I think he's my RB6, I believe. If I looked at my latest grades and everything, my final grades that I put in. And like, the running back class is like ridiculous in depth. And it's like, and then you got multiple guys that fits multiple schemes. Some guys are scheme versatile. Some guys are just wide zone. Some guys are gap. Some guy can do both. And you just feel like, this is what, And I think, and the crazy thing is, Keith, people are like, I think we all felt like, man, there might be a run day 2 on running backs. Then you get reports that teams are willing to wait. And I was like, like I'm not surprised they're willing to wait. With this class, it was like, I can get me an edge rusher, I can get me whatever else I need, then I can double back and get a running back in round 3, 4, or 5 and feel good about it. But for me, Keith, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, and I'm not even and you know us, DP. Like I've been, and we collectively on this podcast have been pounding the table for the running backs, right? Since the Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and before that, it's been like, hey, if you like them, love them, draft them. But I'll say this. The issue with the running backs is that there's not a lot of depth at a lot of other positions. So I think that's going to come and be the problem. That's what I told you when I was, just using the mock draft machine, and I'd be like, okay, cool. Let me go, because if I see Quinshon Judkins there, it's like, man, let me get Quinshon's in a second, right? And then I get to the third round, I'm like, I want an offensive tackle. And then I start scratching my head, and I say, oh, man, this don't look good. So then what I do, I exit out and start all over, right? I start the draft over again. Because trying to and the way that it works is that if you're a running back needy team, you better get that offensive tackle in the second round. And maybe you can get an edge rusher in the third, and then go get your running back in the fourth, right? Like that seems about where it needs to be, because every time I went running backs extremely early, I was left with some head scratching situations, trying to fill out, especially offensive tackle, corner. You sitting there like, oh man. But DP, I think this is a perfect time to transition, right? And we talk about the running backs and why do we feel like we can do that? Is because there are positions with the least amount of depth, right? Some positions that are extremely thin, that if you want you one, you better go get you one ASAP. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From guys, from 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine your prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 back in bonus bets today. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 back in bonus bets today. Before we kick off and talk about the positions with the least amount of depth, I want to throw something out there. From the first topic, the position for me that has the most depth, I think, is going to be interior defensive line. And if a team, now don't get me wrong, I love Mason Graham, I love Walter Nolan, we got Kenneth Grant. But if teams say, listen, I rather go with a skill position, I'd rather get that wide receiver one, that I'd rather get Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren, and then in the second round, you look at the second round, you can be like, well, I got me some guys that can play 3 tech, 0, 1, 2, 5, 4. This is a loaded and versatile interior defensive line group from, like I said, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Omar Norman Lott was one of your favorites, Tyleik Williams, Derek Harmon. We talked about Darius Alexander earlier this week, TJ Sanders from South Carolina, CJ West, Alfred Collins, if you're looking for a big physical nose tackle that can play 2 gaps, Shamar Turner, Vernon Broughton, the guy that you introduced to the world earlier in the college football season, Jordan Phillips from Maryland. It's a lot of, especially teams that struggle with the run. I think this is a really good draft for you. If you need that powerful interior defensive lineman, there are multiple guys that can anchor on the interior of your defensive line. But Keith, kicking it to the positions, I think you started kind of heading that way towards the end of the last segment. The positions that teams cannot wait for. I do believe, and I'm going right to New England. I know some New England fans are like, no, I don't want Will Campbell. I don't want Armand Membu. And I get it. You're at 4. You're sitting there hoping that we get 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks with the first 3 picks. Mm-hmm. It's probably not going to happen. You know what I mean? So you're going to lose out on Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, which means if that happens, you better go ahead and get you a Will Campbell or Armand Membu. There's no amount of talent around the quarterback that's going to be more important than a lack of talent to protect him. And that's a big thing for me. So, tackle is key. Offensive line, I think interior, guard, I think we'll be fine. There's good depth. Mm-hmm. Center, no, absolutely not. You better get you a Jarrett Wilson. You better look at Gray Zabel and say, listen, I'm gonna go ahead and move you to center because you know you could do it. You might be able to get Tyler Booker to play center as well. I think he took some snaps at the Senior Bowl to showcase what he could do at that position as well. But yeah, tackle is the one where it's man, after the top guys, you got Ariante Ursary on day 2. But it's kind of a slim picking situation, more so if you're looking for an immediate starter and contributor. You know what I mean? I love Ozzie Trapilo from Boston College, athletic, tall, long, he's got the build and the length, but I think NFL power is going to give him some issues. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's just the guys on day 2, you got to be wary. These guys may not start day 1 right out the gate as rookies. The offensive tackle class, if you need one, you better get one early. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And because there's only so many guys with the upside to be a premier offensive tackle, right? Some of these guys have clear floors as what they're going to be. So if you have the chance, like you said, if you're in New England or one of these other, even potentially Jacksonville, is just consider it if they need another offensive tackle, right? Go get the guy that you want. Yeah, the Jets too, right? It'd be okay, let me get the offensive tackle and get that off of the board if that's what you really need for your team. The position I was going to go with, DP, is corner. Corner, to me, this has been one of the more questionable classes with corners, because you talk about excuse me, you remember that draft? This was the 2022 class when you had Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner sitting at the top. Then you had guys like Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon. You had Kyer Elam. We had, Andrew Booth. We had, I think it was even more guys went in the third round as starters. Like that class was crazy, DP. This class right here, I think there are a few guys that you say, you know what, these are plug and play day one starters. And then there's some guys that you have question marks about, right? Like even, I know we just came off of the workout of Benjamin Morrison. I didn't hear reviews, and I'm asked you if you heard anything one way or the other that was extremely positive or negative, or, like just any type of consensus away from that. And but I think based off, if you're just, so with that data point and that data point kind of being a moot point, then you go back to the film. I think the film is a late first to second round guy, but he's a guy that I would want to see in person, right? Like what are your size? How do you hold, like your weight, things like that. So you're still talking about teams potentially saying, okay, this guy might be a second or third round player. So I think the cornerback position, DP, is extremely thin. Also, if you want plug and play, I know for sure this guy can start for me right away.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially with I think, like you said, the immediate starter, I think the outside part of it, like the outside premier boundary corner island guy, one-on-one. I think, especially from a size standpoint, you get between, well, depends on what Travis Hunter actually is, or where he actually plays. Like him, Will Johnson. You look at guys like Trey Amos, Azariah Thomas, Siobhan Revel. The injuries to Revel and Benjamin Morrison hurt this class more than anything. Because if those guys were able to put on 12, 13 games of straight film, and we watch the evolution and the development of them throughout the year, like 2023's Benjamin Morrison, he was locked down. You know what I mean? Just tape was great in 2023. It wasn't as good when he did play in 2024. I think Ja'Cory Brooks gave him a little bit of trouble when they played Louisville, stuff like that.
It's like size gave him trouble, which made me concerned about his size, right? Like, okay,
he's not. I don't think he's like he looks like he's more of a 5'11", like 185 type of guy, maybe 190. Right. Yep. You know what I mean? So then it's like, you just kind of, like I said, the hip thing. I was watching the clips that I think some of the reporters put up from his pro day. He moved well. Hip looked like it was fine. So I was like, I think they had like 22 out of the 32 teams were there. Scouts, they sent representatives and everything. It just sucks for him because he wasn't able to do things earlier in this process to really kind of stamp himself. It's just like, hey, go back and check the tape. Watch when I was fully healthy, 2023. But yeah, I do think the cornerback class is a little bit of a situation where you're like, all right, after a couple guys, you're going to look at it and be like, well, you know what I mean? Like, because a Darian Porter, developmental guy, first year as a full-time starter at corner, you know what I mean? He played former wide receiver, right? So, he got the ball skills. Unlike most corners, you can't say he can't catch. He played wide receiver. So he can catch. Like, he's an outstanding athlete with the 6'4", 200 pounds out of Iowa State. A little bit of an older prospect at 24 years old. You know what I'm saying? Your boy, Dorian Strong, another tall, strong, physical corner. A guy that I've heard a lot of people really like is Jacob Parrish, the kind of nickel defender from Kansas State.
So I want to jump into that because that's the other side too, is that the best corners in this, like as far as the man-to-man, right? Like guys that I feel like, you know what, I just need to cover somebody. I think these guys could do it. The best corners are also undersized. When we talk about Jabbar Muhammad, Quincy Riley, right? Like your man-to-man corners. You talking about Maxwell Harrison, he's a little light. Then you get into the Jacob Parrish tier and things like that. I agree with you that you almost want to put those guys into the nickel category, but then if you do that, then it's like, who's left at my outside corners, right? Like where's that second tier of outside corners? So it's definitely tough.
Yeah, it's definitely like as you go down the list and start looking at some of these corners, it's not a great group. No, it's not. Denzel Burke fell completely off the map. You know what I mean? Or a guy had late first, day two, type of grades, and now he's like, where is he going to land? You know what I mean? And you got to try to figure out what teams are going to do with this with him. You got the duo from Kansas, Kobe Bryant and Melo Dotson. You know what I mean? And with them, Dotson has more of the kind of prototypical size, but I think athletically he's a little bit lacking. Where Kobe Bryant is a better athlete and everything, but he's lacking in the size standpoint. He's 6'1", 175. So it's a teams that like legitimately teams that need corner. That's why it was so odd to me to see the Eagles say we're gonna let Darius Slade go, because I'm like, you must either really believe in Keely Ringo, or you got a plan. You know what I mean? You got another plan at the cornerback spot coming into this draft. Like, now, granted, they are at 32. They absolutely could pick one of these big long corners we're talking about to be the next guy on the outside with Cooper DeJean in the slot and across from Quinyon Mitchell. But the cornerback group is definitely one that gives you a little angst, because you're just like, all right, if we don't go early, we might be out of a corner. Like, we might not be drafting the guy that can play early in his career, like early in his rookie campaign. He might be more of a guy that down the back stretch. And like you said, a lot of these guys, it's kind of more, it's more nickels than outside corners, like build wise.
Yeah. No, 100%. Well, DP, let's do this, man. There's the classic conversation, right? Do you draft for need, or do you just simply take the best player available? That's what every draft fan wants to know. That's what we're going to talk about with our Locked On family over here. And we're going to give our takes, right? Do you draft for need if you're an NFL team, or do you draft for best player available? Let's get into that conversation coming up next.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your pair controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. It's time to have that war room discussion, Keith. The one that happens in all 32 teams draft room, unless you got the number one overall pick and you know exactly where you're going. Everything else is like, we're waiting for the first pick to come off the board. Drafting for need of going BPA. Like, I think that this has always been a structural, conceptual discussion that really is kind of split. Like, you get some people say, man, get what you need, right? For example, the Seattle Seahawks at pick 17, 18. At 18, they need offensive linemen. They need interior O-line, right? But it's like, well, what if Matthew Golden falls and we just take the best player on the board? And it was like, all right, we could do that. And then we leave Sam Darnold with no offensive line. Like, so it's like, what do you do, Keith? If you're in the war room and you're in part of that discussion, which side of the table are you pounding? Are you pounding to say, hey, let's draft for need and fill that need? Or do we say, you know what? Let's get best player available right out the gate?
I'm 1,000,000%. And even this draft might be 1,000,000,000%. I'm going best player available, DP. You will get in trouble in this draft if you start drafting for positional need outside of if you're not a team picking in the top 7, and then you start reaching, right? Because we talked about the value. Like some of these position groups, you can get the same player at 20 that you can get at 60, right? And so as far as just upside and floor, I would go definitely best player available. I just think that you get yourself in trouble. My strategy is this: like, if I'm building a team, I'm filling out my needs for my team, most of them through free agency. And then that way, when I get in the draft, because the draft is already, I think what they said, 50% of first round is hit, right? So you get past that, the percentages drop when you're talking about the second, third, fourth round. So I would want proven commodities as far as guys that's already played in the NFL. I know what they look like in the NFL. Let those fill out my needs. And then now I could go best player available so I could have the highest chance to hit, because it's already a low percentage shot just with drafting, period.
No, I like that thought process. Because this is a very interesting thought process, because it's like Like we finished up with the position with the least depth, and it's like, what if you need tackle? You know what I mean? It's like, do I go like a team that needs a tackle? They say we're drafting Ashton, Jeanty, or like the Jets. You know they need a right tackle, right? You don't. Tyron Smith just retired. Morgan Moses is in New England. You got Olu Fashanu at left tackle, but who's your right tackle on the roster right now? And it was like, do I take Tyler Warren or do I take Armand Membu? You know what I mean? It was just like, because if you take Tyler Warren, you're telling Justin Fields, okay, we got you a weapon. And Fields is looking like, all right, so this right side of the offensive line is incomplete. Oh, what is the plan there? You know, I think that's where it gets a little dicey, but I'm with you. So, and all right, we're gonna see if this is a cop out or not. I'm all about drafting the best player available. Well, let me preface this. In this draft, I'm about drafting the best player available at a position of need, if that makes sense. So it's like,
you gotta explain that, DP. You might be close to the cop out, baby. You might be close to the cop. We gotta talk about that.
I'm trying not to walk that line, Key. So in that case, so you know, for me, it's like, all right, if you are a team that needs an edge rusher, right? Like like, for example, you think about the Carolina Panthers. They need a couple of different things. They need an edge rusher, they need a wide receiver, running back, stuff like that. And you're sitting there on the board, and you're like, all right, who's the best player available? And if the best player available on the board is Armand Membu, you don't take him. You know what I mean? That's not a position of need for you. So I'd rather get the next best player available. I'm looking, okay, it's Jalen Walker, it's Michael Williams. That fits a need that we have. And I'd rather go with that rather than, okay, who's the best actual prospect? And it's like, well, that's not, we don't need a tackle. We don't need an offensive lineman at all. Not early, because we got 2 tackles. Our guards are fine. Our center is straight. We're good on the O-line. So if it's a situation like that, then yeah, I'm like, don't go BPA, because you're drafting the guy that's not going to impact your team in year one. Like if you're like, okay, we're just preparing for the future, all right, great, whatever. Somebody's getting fired probably, because you're not going to get the best bang out of that pick. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get the return value from that selection, because it wasn't a guy that's not going to play. Like if you're a team that has wide receivers, and the best player available is Torrey McMillan, why are you know what I mean? Like on the board, like, yeah, we're not drafting Torrey McMillan. Like we don't need him. Like let's go get that tackle. Let's go get that edge rusher or that corner, and especially in those positions that are, as we talked about in the second topic, kind of slim. You know what I mean? If Will Johnson's on the board and you're like, for example, the Miami Dolphins, let's say they do have that conversation about, oh, well, you know what? We're trying to trade Jalen Ramsey. We might be trading Tyreek Hill, so you might be losing 2 all-pro talents, and you're on the board, and you're like, all right, Matthew Golden, Will Johnson, and it's just like, this is a dichotomy. You know what I mean? Like, do we go with like which one's going to be the bigger position of need, right? Like which one's going to hurt? Which one of those losses is going to hurt this team more? Losing Jalen or losing Tyreek? And I'm like,
I would say
they're both going to hurt you.
Yeah, you know? If you Miami in that situation, you just say both of them. Right, give me both of them. How do I give both of them? You might have to do the Houston Texans. Remember when they
start trading picks?
Yeah, and trade back in. You need to be if you pick at pick 13, you need to pick one at 13 and then trade back into 14 and get the other one at 14.
No, 100%. I think that's where I am with it. But typically, I am with you though. Typically, if it wasn't this draft, in a normal draft, it'd definitely be BPA. Like I'm all about getting, like I said, the best player available. I don't want to. I'm not huge on the positional value thing. I think I look at it like this too, is like if like with the running back stuff. If because I'll listen, and I'm gonna tell you right now, being connected to the Falcons Nation, they love Bijan, but boy, do they hate the fact that they passed on Jalen Carter right now. And I'm like, yeah, you should hate that. Like that you were right there in the prime position to stop his slide down the board at 8, and you said no. You know what I mean? It's like. And I love Bijan, but it's like you needed D-line help so bad. And this, for example, they're a perfect team. Like where they go with like what they view as the best player available instead of addressing their biggest needs, and they haven't been able to rush the passer in like 20 years. What was it? Williamson, when we were doing the mock draft special, says it's been like 20 years that they have not done well in rushing the passers. Like, y'all got to break this streak at some time. Listen, the Detroit Pistons just won their first playoff game in 17 years. Break the streak, Atlanta. Like, get some pass rush going, man. That's kind of where I am with it. I'm typically BPA. It's just it has to make sense. I'm not passing up on if it's a premier spot where you're like, man, like we gotta get after the quarterback, we gotta protect the passer, stuff like that. Like I think that was kind of to the conversation we had. He was like, "What if you're the Giants? Why would you take Abdul or Travis over Shador if you really like Shador?" And I'm like, "Well, for me, like you just talked about with the Dolphins, I want both. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and get the premier talent, the blue chip player, and I'm already on the phone after that. Like I'm already, in fact, I'm on the phone while I'm making that selection. How do I get up in the teens and talk somebody down into the top of the second round? And we give them the picks. You're gonna have to give up not even probably. You're gonna have to give up next year's first. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to throw out. Hey, listen, if I want Shador that bad, then I'm gonna get Shador. But let me get Travis to pair with him. And now he walks into an offense in rookie camp or in training camp. Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter. Like you set your guy up for success in that way. So that's how I look at it. Typically BPA, but definitely in this draft, best player available at a position of need.
Yep. Well, DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us. We like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Guys, tomorrow we got bold predictions for the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, and which team is going to have the best night. It's a whole show of predictions. So come and join us again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.